right, welcome back, Jaguars. I hope you had a great weekend. So, today we're going to be going over fractions. We're going to do a really quick review because we don't have enough time to start over the entire lesson or the entire unit. Okay, but I'm going to do a quick review. Hopefully, we can get through everything, okay? So, when we think about fractions, there's usually two numbers that are separated by something called a fraction bar. Okay, the top number is called the numerator. Okay, so we have our numerator, and the numerator shows how many parts are going to be highlighted, okay, or how many parts they're asking for from a whole. Now, the denominator shows how many parts there are of the whole. All right, so I'm going to give an example of a problem, or not a problem. I'm going to give an example of a fraction. Okay, we're going to do 2/3. Okay, so remember, our numerator, that's our top one, that's going to be number of parts from the whole. Okay, and the bottom, our denominator, is number of total parts. Okay, so if I'm going to draw this fraction out, I want to draw a picture that has a total of 3 parts. Okay, so I like to use rectangles. They're very easy to draw, especially for fractions. And there's going to be 3 parts. Since it all starts out with 1, when I draw one line, there's 2 parts, and it's 3 parts. Okay? And then our fraction says 2/3. Okay, I want to show 2/3. Well, I have 3/3 already here, but I want to show 2. Okay, that's the number of parts from the whole that I want to highlight. So we're going to highlight 2 of them, or color in 2 of them. Okay, so this fraction right here shows 2/3. Okay, I'm going to do one more example. All right, let's say the fraction I want to represent is 3/4. Okay, I want you to do this with me. So grab a piece of paper or a pencil, try it out yourself. We're going to show 3/4. Okay, so 3 is going to be what? I help you guess the number of parts from the whole. From whole. And how many total parts will there be? Well, there's going to be 4 because that's our denominator. Number of total parts. All right, so let's draw this. So let's draw a rectangle. Our first rectangle already has 1 part. Every time we draw a line the same way as all the other lines, we're going to add another part. So if my first line is going straight down vertically, I want my other lines to draw vertically. So I added 1 line, so now there's 2 parts, 3 parts, 4 parts. All right, and then now we're going to highlight how many parts? Well, I hope you're thinking in your head 3, because that's the fraction that we need to show, 3/4. All right, I'm just going to highlight that right here, and then we're good to go. Okay, so this is our review about showing fractions or drawing them out. Okay, the next one we're going to do is showing the fractional units, and we're going to write them out as a number and then start to learn how to compare them, okay? All right, Jaguars. I mentioned in the previous video that we're going to be looking at fractional units, and we're going to combine that lesson of fractional units with looking at equivalent fractions. Now, when we think about equivalent fractions, we're trying to find a fraction that equals the same as another fraction. Okay, and here's what's going to happen. we're going to think of the rule, or I want us to remember the rule, that any number times 1 is it or equals itself. Okay? No matter what we do, whenever we multiply by 1, we're going to get the same number. Okay? Now, when we think of fractions, if we have 1 shaded out of one item, that equals 1. That's 1 whole. Okay? Just like if I had 2 over 2, that equals 2 shaded out of 2 parts. That still equals 1 whole. The same as for 3 thirds, 4 thirds, or 4 fourths, 5 fifths, and etc. Okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to look at fractions that are going to equal itself and identify them by their units. Okay? So first off, I started out with 1 whole. Okay? 1 whole. And then, that was just the whole thing shaded in. Now, if I take the 1 over 1 and multiply it by 2 over 2, I have 2 over 2, which gets me still 1 whole. Okay, the same thing goes for 3 over 3, 4 over 4. It's always going to be the same for the wholes. Now let's think about it. Would it be the same if I'm not working with a whole number or 1 whole part? So let's give it a shot. So I'm going to use the fraction 1/2. Okay? 1/2, that means 1 part is shaded while another part is not. So 1 out of 2 parts. Now, if I multiply it by 1, and I want to divide it into 2, or I want to divide them into 2, or multiply it by 2. So 2 over 2, what's happening for this shape is it's going to have our 2 parts, and then we're splitting our 2 wholes from the past over here into 2 more parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and if we had 1 whole and then it got divided, or it got multiplied by 2, how many parts do we have shaded now? Well, I count 1 and 2. So now our new fraction is 2 over 4. So you can just multiply across. 1 times 2 equals 2. 2 times 2 equals 4. Okay? So they're the same. So let's try another type of problem. And you might remember this. If I have 3 fourths and I want to see how many 16ths that would equal, we multiplied it by a certain number. So 4 times what will equal 16? Well, if you remember your facts for 4, we have 4 times 4 equals 16. Well, remember, to show an equivalent fraction, we need this whole part to equal 1. So if there's 4 parts in this total, how many need to be highlighted or shaded in? We would need 4 of it, because that's still 1 whole. So now 3 times 4 equals 12. So now we have 12 16ths equals 3 fourths. These are equivalent fractions. All right. We're going to move on to starting to compare fractions. And this will be in about 2 videos worth, okay? All right, Jaguars, this is the part where we left off in fractions. So bear with me, take your time, and listen closely and follow how I do things. We're going to do a couple examples of how we're going to compare fractions, okay? So there's 3 rules that we're going to follow, and I'm going to go through it step by step while trying to show how we compare it. Okay, so our first problem says 2 thirds, and we're going to compare it to 3 fourths. our first step says to find the common denominator or find the common multiples for the denominator between both fractions. Okay, so our denominators are 3 and 4. So the multiples of 3 are 3, 6, 9, 12, while 4 is 4, 8, 12. Okay, and we want to use the very first multiple that they have in common. So we're not going to work with really big numbers, okay? So that was our first step. Our second step was to figure out what number was multiplied for each of those denominators. Okay, so we're going to see 2/3 equals how many 12ths? Well, based on my math facts, I know that 3 times 4 equals 12. And since we have to multiply them by 1, we need to be 4 over 4, because 4 over 4, or 4/4, is still equals 1. So now, 2 times 4 equals 8. All right, now we have 3/4. Okay, so 3/4 equals how many 12ths? Well, based on my math facts, 4 times 3 equals 12. So then that means I have to multiply our numerator by 3 as well. So 3 times 3 equals 9. Okay, so I just figured out the number that was multiplied and then used it for the numerator. That was step 2. Okay, now for step 3. Okay, step 3 says that we're going to compare the fractions now. So we have 8/12, which is 2/3, and we're going to compare that to 9/12, which is 3/4. Okay, so which fraction has more of their parts covered or highlighted? 8/12 or 9/12? Well, I know that 9 is bigger than 8, so 8/12 is less than 9/12, which means 2/3 is less than 3/4. Okay, so I'm gonna do the next one a little bit quicker, so just pause when you're gonna try to do each step. Okay, we're gonna look at solving 3/5 or 4/7. Okay, well, I'm going to look at my multiples of 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. And then there's also 7, which is 7, 14, 21, 28, 35. Okay, so I have a common denominator of 35. Or a common multiple of 35, so my common denominator will be 35. So then now, I'm going to have 3/5, or times what will equal blank 35ths. Well, that's times 7 times 7. 3 times 7 is 21. And then I have 4/7 times blank equals a certain number of 35ths. 7 times 5 is 35. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 5, and that's 20. And then we're going to compare them. We have 21/35 and 20/35. And 21/35 is greater. So that means 3/5 is greater than 4/7. Okay? All right, Jaguars, we're going to do some more examples about comparing our fractions, because that's what all of lesson 15 is about. Okay? So, we're going to be working with a few of them. So we're going to start out with an easier one, then do one that's in the middle, and then one that might be a little bit difficult. Okay, so let's get started. So for our first example, I want us to think about 2/5 and compare it to 4/5. Okay? When we think about our fractions, our denominator will say what our units are. Right now, we are looking at fifths, okay? So if we take out our unit of fifths, we have 2 is greater than, less than, or equal to 4. Okay, so we're going to show 2, is that greater than, less than, or equal to 4? Well, I know that 4 is definitely bigger than 2. So 2 is less than 4. So then now if I'm going to show it as fractions, I could draw a picture, or you could use the steps from the previous one. This one's an easier one, so I'm going to show you what the picture will look like. We're going to show how many fifths, and the shapes are going to be just about the same size. And I'm going to show 2/5 or 4/5. So looking at that, 4/5 definitely has more shaded in. So 2/5 is less than 4/5. Next, we're going to go with 3/4 and compare it to 4/5. Okay, now we're going to look back at we're going to think back to our steps. Our first step, we're going to look at our denominators. So we have 4 and 5, and we're going to think about the common denominator, which we're going to use multiples to figure out. So multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and 5 is 5, 10, 15, 20. So they have a common multiple of 20. So now we're going to do our multiplication. So 3/4 is going to equal a certain amount of 20ths. Well, we multiplied 4 times 5 to get 20, so 3 times 5 equals 15. Let's see how many 4/5 will make a certain number of 20ths. So 4/5 equals a certain number of 20ths. Well, 5 times 4 equals 20. So 4 times 4 equals 16. So then now I have 15 20ths and 16 20ths. So 15 20ths compared to 16 20ths. Well, it's the same denominator, so it's the same unit. 15 is less than 16, so 15 20ths is less than 16 20ths. So 3/4 is less than 4/5. All right, we're gonna try one more. Okay, and we have about a minute to do this. So let's say we have 8/3 compared to 10/4. Okay, so let's look at our multiples of 3. So 3, 6, 9, 12. Multiples of 4 are 4, 8, 12. And then so 8/3 times what equals a number of 12s? That was 4. 4 times 8 is 32. Now 10/4 times something will give us a number of 12s. 4 times 3 is 12. So 10 times 3 is 30. So 32/12 is actually greater